to the CAFC, the Charlton All-Time Fantasy 11 Club. I'm your host, Sam White, and today we've got an absolutely amazing guest. Someone's a bit nervous about, actually. It's Mr. Gavin Billenness, the editor, creator behind MODMAG and MODPOD, which was the biggest influence for me starting this channel. It is... I know I say this every time, God, but we're with the Monday. I'm recording this the Monday after we just played Reading and lost 2-0 there. And the day before we go and play Lincoln at home, I'm going to be at that game. If you're around, come and say hello. But yeah, it's a tough time at the moment. And MODPOD and MODMAG really are a safe space like this. They look a little bit more about what we're doing at the moment. And me and Gavin did really get into what's going on with the club at the moment. It is hard not to, but basically it's a great chat. He's such a lovely guy, and you know, that want and the need to remember the good old times, the good stuff. No one does it better than MODMAG and MODPOD. So it's a delight to have him on. Enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for the response to Tyler's episode. That was incredible. So many people come over from his channel. So welcome. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy the other episodes as well. If you're into YouTube, we've got Charlie from Brazilians coming up soon. Joshua Wilcox has already been on. And any other episodes, we've had some amazing people on. So have a little flick through and enjoy those. This is episode number 8 of this first series of 10. I'm starting to plot and plan what we're going to be doing for the second series. So once this series ends, I'll do some little analysis into who's got chosen, who are the best picks, and yeah, what do you guys think? Whose team would win in a match if they all played each other? So yeah, hope you enjoy, and yeah, not much more to say really. This is Mr. Gavin Billenness. Hello and welcome back to the CAFC Charlton All-Time Fantasy 11 Football Club. My name is Sam White. I'm your host, and I've got a very special guest this evening. I mean, it is absolute torrid. I want a better phrase, dog shit at the moment, being a Charlton supporter. It's horrible. No one likes doing it. We're basically in a relegation zone of League One, longest time ever in there. This is the safe place, the place to avoid all of that. This is a place to talk about the good old days, the good times, the players that made us smile for a change. And one of the biggest inspirations for this channel is my fantastic guest this evening's brainchild. It is the editor, Mr. Gavin Billenness from MODMAG. How are you doing, sir? Are you well?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad we won't be talking about the current situation, really. Although I did think maybe this might be like a bit of therapy.
Oh, yeah,
yeah, because, it is. You know, even though you just said we're not going to talk about it, I am going to talk about it a bit.
You need to get it all out, don't you? You can't take
I'm going to get it out early doors because I don't think I've been this down in the dumps about Charlton ever. And I don't want to start on a dampener. I don't want to start on a downer. But I think, yeah, after that Derby result, even though we weren't expected to get anything, I came away feeling really flat because I'd kind of convinced myself that we might get something, you know, like you do.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the Derby game wasn't the problem. I watched it, and like you, I was like, well, we could have got a point there. We could have taken it. Really, last 20 minutes we looked really good, but they're in the playoffs, and I was like, well, that's not going to define our season. What will define our season is the shit that's led up to that, the fact that we're relying on that, and how bad it's been because that's my first question. Like, when did you get into Charlton? And for want of a better question, how old are you? Because I feel like you've got a similar sort of age to me, and a lot of the choices you made are similar to my own. So when did you get into Charlton? And it really does feel like this is the worst period that I've experienced. Is it the same for you?
Yeah, I think you're probably being kind. I imagine I'm significantly older than you. I'm 47.
Oh, wow. You're looking good, very good on it.
Thanks,
not to flirt on a podcast, but my God, looking very good.
I was in makeup for an hour before I came on. No, that's very kind. That's very kind of you. No, I started supporting Charlton in the 1986-87 season. Okay. My first game was Aston Villa over at Selhurst Park. So I was 10. Wow. And my uncle bought me my first season ticket. I should confess or should own up that my dad is Palace. My dad's a Palace fan. And if my dad had taken me when I was 10 to Palace, I'd be a Palace fan, but he didn't.
Sliding doors. Imagine
Exactly,
you
very
watching
much
the
so.
Premiership now and watching Eze and Elise. No one wants that.
I don't really follow the Premiership.
No.
I don't, what is it any good? I don't know.
I mean, I've heard they're all money grabbing, to be honest. There's no real heart in it anymore.
Yeah. No, so that was, as you say, a bit of a sliding doors moment, and that was my introduction. But what people tend to forget, maybe, is that we were in the top flight in that season. And of course, we were playing over Selhurst Park, but I was too young to know. I was too young to be annoyed about it. I didn't know any different. I'd never seen the Valley. I didn't know we'd been evicted. I didn't know the politics behind it. So, as far as I was concerned, I was going to see, top flight football. I collected football stickers like the other 10-year-olds did, and my uncle insisted on getting to the ground far too early, like a lot of grown-ups do.
Yeah.
But I would be waiting there with my autograph book when the Liverpool coach came in, and I'd be getting the autographs of the players off my stickers. And for a 10-year-old, it's amazing.
Oh,
it was the, Brian Clough ruffled my hair, and
wow.
it was just brilliant. It was great fun. And I was 10, and as I say, I didn't get caught up in the politics, and understandably, fans stayed away because they didn't want to travel over to Selhurst Park. But I didn't know any different. I still walked up to those, it's a sacrilege, really, it's a bit blasphemous, but when I walked out at Selhurst Park and saw the pitch for the first time, it was, I was 10 and I was going to the football, and that was all that mattered. So a lot of my team, which we'll obviously get into, is, from a nostalgic point of view from that era.
That's you're the perfect person to ask this question to, because I feel so sorry. Recently, I've had a couple of the younger YouTube guys, Joshua Wilcox and Tyler Rowlinson, and I feel sorry. I genuinely feel sorry for them that this is kind of the last 10 years has been their introduction. They're in their early 20s, late teens. So when they were 10, they were watching Charlton on their decline. So for me, went to my first game in 96, 97. Right. It was all up for me from the time I went to the time I went to university. It was just curbishly and absolute soaring Charlton. But that's my question to you is, do you pick, because you've seen so many different generations, then you saw the Upton Park and the Selhurst days where we were Lenny Lawrence top, you had Colin Walsh playing for us, you had European title winners in that team, and then so they're the players you're watching when you're younger. Do you think you end up, they're always your heroes and they're always going to be the ones you pick? Because for me, I feel like watching us in the Premier League years, Di Canio, Mendonca, Kinsella, they probably are the best players that Charlton have ever had. It's just coincided that they were the players that they were in my formative years as well. So I can never tell which is which, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And I think we took it for granted a little bit during the Premier. I certainly did. We didn't know how good it was, and we certainly didn't know how far we were going to fall. So I think we maybe didn't enjoy it as much as we should have done at the time. It was great, don't get me wrong, it was brilliant. I look back on it with fondness, of course. But I do maybe think sometimes, for example, I'd be like, oh, who we got Saturday? Oh, Everton. Oh yeah, whatever. Yeah. But now, you'd kill for that, wouldn't you? Every week Premier. And I think you're right. Those players like Kinsella, your Jensens, your Parkers, they're people's favourite players because they were our best players. They were in our generation, or our lifetime, they're by far the best players we've seen.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I think that thing of taking it for granted. I mean, my dad was still leaving 5 minutes before the end because he wanted to beat the traffic. Like the amount of goals we missed and the amount of waving off Ronaldo and Beckham and players like that.
Yeah. God, that's the other thing. The players that turned up at the Valley, it's like, and you did take it for granted a little bit. It was great. It was brilliant, and I'd do anything to get back there. But it's a funny time at Charlton at the moment. I mean, I'm quite buoyed by Nathan Jones's arrival, and I think it's an incredibly ambitious appointment, and I think it's a great appointment. Hopefully that doesn't come back to haunt me. But
Well, I was going to say, after listening to the podcast again for the 8th time of each of the episodes, you were pretty buoyed about Bengana. You were delighted with Dean Holden. So God knows what that means for Jones.
Oh, I think I'm naturally an optimistic person. So when it's a clean slate, and there was a lot to like about Dean Holden on a personal level, and I think everybody. It's a bit like when you sign a new player. Everybody wants him to be great. Everybody wants it to work, and everybody, even Nigel, even Michael Appleton, who, on reflection, no Charlton fan thought that was a good appointment. No Charlton fan really surprised at how that panned out. But even then, I got behind him. I thought, well, I don't like him. He's got no charisma. He's got no warmth. There's nothing I can really associate with. But if he gets us winning games, that's fine.
And he did, didn't he? I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work out, looking back, well, we just became Chucks and EKFC. It coincided with Chucks coming back and playing 10 games. Suddenly, you're winning them. I think the biggest thing they kind of learned in hindsight, the ownership, was that they let him go too early. Holden going that time was no good to anyone.
No.
He did sort of, it felt like that last game, I don't know who it was, I can't remember who it was against, but where he sort of played this really weird formation and was playing players out of position.
Was it Oxford? That was his last. That was what the nail in the coffin, wasn't it?
Yeah. But he was doing what he had with the players he had available, knowing that if he didn't win or get a draw, I can't remember if we got a draw now, but if he didn't win, definitely.
We didn't. We I think we were 1-1, and he could. I was speaking to, I can't forget who I was speaking to, but they said, why didn't he just shut up shop? If he'd have got a draw, he would have got a stay of execution, I think. He'd have stopped the rot. But I wasn't at the game, but I've heard it looked like he was going for the win, as if he'd been told you got to win.
That's his last game. It doesn't matter what. If he didn't win, he was out the door, so you might as well go for it. But I think they learned that, and they learned that with the wrong manager, because then they probably gave Appleton too long.
Yeah.
And now we're in a situation where, if you could have gone to Jones just before the window. I mean, I was more for Warnock. I don't know if we ever really had a chance of getting in, but it feels for me like we need just to steady the ship till the end of the season, just keep us up. And then Jones coming in the summer with a window to work on it, great. You're just hoping that Jones has got enough in him as well to keep us up, and then he can go on that rebuild journey over the summer as well.
Well, as my WhatsApp group will tell you, I'm petrified about going down. It really, I'm not enjoying it at the moment because I'm so concerned and worried about that. Because what happens if we go down? There's a real, it's bizarre. It's a paradox because there's a real buoyancy around the club with the arrival of Jones, and it seems to be a bit of an elephant in the room that everybody's going, oh, this for the future, that, Jones has come in, he's going to steady. But, it's a bit hairy. If we don't get a result on Saturday, and we might not, because they're banging form, Reading. It just seems such a shame that Nathan Jones has arrived in these circumstances. If we, if we were comfortably mid-table, which we used to be, and what I wouldn't give for mid-table mediocrity right now.
Well, you say, I mean, taking the Premiership years for granted, have we taken the mid-table League One years for granted? I mean, it is scary because I do wonder. I don't understand the finances, but these owners have come in. They put a lot of money into it. If we're suddenly down in League Two, can they afford to take another loss for a year and then rebuild it? I'm sure
you've got to hope that they can. You've got to hope that they'll look at the Ryan Reynolds model and just keep pumping. Well, I don't know, but that's what frightens me. If I had reassurance that they said, look, if we go down, it's not ideal, but we're not going anywhere, then I'd make peace with it a bit. But what frightens me is it could be catastrophic. It could be, if they pulled the plug, if they thought, well, this isn't what we signed up for.
It wouldn't take a lot, would it? I mean, to think that how close we were before what's his name?
Sangard.
Sangard came in. Yes, sorry, I've literally wiped his name from my memory.
Yeah, no.
Like it was, but to think how close we were to go into administration before he came in.
Oh, we really were, yeah.
Like, and now we're in a worse position if we go into League Two. Who's going to come and save us then? I mean, we're no longer. no longer even a League One team. It's just such a less attractive option. But I mean, that's a lot of dark stuff that we've gone through in a very short space of time.
Yeah, I know. I do tend to catastrophize things a little bit. That's just in my nature.
We know how bad we are at the moment. That is, it's clear. I do think you're right. I think Jones is the right guy. Now I sort of believe in watching him talk and seeing his interviews. I watched he did a masterclass thing, his game against City, Hampton where 1-2-0. Like the way he talks about formations and tactics and things, you think, right, I don't understand anything you're saying, so you must be good. This is going to be fine. But yeah, you do hope he comes in and steadies the ship. But that's why I love MODMAG, and that's why I love the MODPOD especially. Where did it come from? How did you create it? Because I've been looking to see, you know, did you write for The Athletic before, or were you an editor or something else? The only thing I found out you were a chef. So I was trying to paint the picture of how that all comes together.
Yeah, that's not really got anything to do with it. I've always worked in newspapers. I'm art director on Metro. So I'm not a writer. I'm a sort of graphic artist, graphic designer. So that's where it comes from. And during lockdown, I wanted to sort of scratch that creative itch, if you like, and produce something. And it coincided with, you know, that man Sangard, who did, whether you like him or not, save us. Yeah. And it obviously, you know, panned out terribly because he took us backwards and he was an absolute nightmare. But at that time, when he came in, there was a huge amount of optimism around, and I was really optimistic about it. And I wanted to do something, and I wanted to kind of ride that wave of optimism. And that's when I decided to launch MODMAG. And it's always been something I'd quite like. I like the idea of doing from a creative point of view. And so, yeah, that was the idea. I didn't know whether he could or not. I put a sort of a message out on Twitter to sort of gauge whether people wanted it, which was a bit lukewarm. But that didn't really make a difference because I was doing it for me, really. I just wanted to produce something, and I didn't want to do an online thing because I've always liked a tangible thing, and I've always liked print and magazines, and I wanted to produce something like that. And in the old school sort of style of the fanzine, really. I've always liked fanzines and magazines, and it's a bit like vinyl, really. It's like collectible, and I wanted it to be something like that, and I wanted it to be nerdy, and I wanted it to be niche, and it is, you know. So when I put the call out to find some like-minded people or writers, really, because once I decided to do it, I had to fill the thing, because I'm not a writer, really. I mean, I can string a sentence together, but it's not what I naturally do. And then people like Steve Charnock replied. He was one of the first, actually, and he's been by my side throughout, and he's been brilliant. Absolutely, really, really talented writer. And then I've got a handful of sort of core contributors like Will Dalton and Vince Raisin, Chris Charnock, and Heather McKinley from Cast does a regular column. Ben Hayes from the Charlton Athletic Museum has started contributing. Clive Harris. It's a kind of steady kind of core, and I lucked out, really, because they're really good writers. Yeah, and the first few I had to put stuff in that was not great, but I needed to fill pages. But as it's gone on, you know, the level of writing in it, I'm really proud of. I mean, it's not me; it's them. And you know, Steve and Will and Chris in particular, they write funny, and funny is the hardest thing to write, you know, consistently and properly funny. Absolutely. You know, lots of people think they can do it, but they do, and that's what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be irreverent and, you know, not necessarily piss takey, but I wanted it to be in the same, and this is the same with our socials, which we've got in trouble with on the odd occasion. Oh, really? I wanted it to be in the same kind of vein as maybe fantasy football with Badil and Skinner, you know, where they would take the mickey out of things. They would, you know, I mean, history hasn't judged that well, because you look back at a few things that they've done. But on the whole, I wanted it to be a bit edgy. I mean, if you can't be edgy in a fanzine, or you can't be a bit naughty and say things that are going to upset a couple of people, then where can you?
I mean, the tone of it is so fantastic. I mean, like you said, humour about football has never been easy. Talking about fantasy football, they got in the new they've just brought it back, haven't they? And Ellis James and Matt Lucas got in trouble for their joke about Steve Cooper and that sort of thing. You know, it is hard. It's so hard to get the right line and get the right tone. What I love about it is I think the stats are there. You know, I was listening to the Colin Walsh episode, I think it was. You were talking to the guys in the museum and that kind of thing. And the stats and the shirts and that, they give you an idea of what the history of the club. But what you'll do with the magazine and those interviews is you give it a sort of a feel as well, a feel of what it was like there. I mean, the things you get out of Mortimer and Brown, especially Stevie Brown, talking about those, what it was actually like the night we won the playoffs, and you know those vet tours that they went on and all this sort of stuff. It gives, like, as a fan just sitting there watching on the from the stands, you kind of paint this picture of what these guys' lives are like, and you know, are they all best mates? They all live in the same house? Are they playing football in their gardens? And you're able to draw that out, and it's hilarious. And what the biggest thing for me is, you've got this real. I've always thought that everyone thinks their club is like Charlton. We think we've got the best fans, we've got the best support, we've got, you know, it feels like a family, everyone's part of it. But you start to realise with those conversations, especially with Varney and Sutherland, it was like that. We genuinely were like a family, and we're so lucky to have that. And yet, again, not to go back to how bad it's been recently, but since the Chatelet came in, it just seems like that is completely gone. Actually, if anything, Sandgaard probably had the most of it. He wrote a song. Like, you can't just write a song for a club and not feel like you care about it. Like, at least he was doing something.
I think Sandgaard had the. Sorry to.
No, please say what's going on around.
I think Sandgaard came in with the best of intentions, but I think when the adulation stopped, you know, he was like, what? And it didn't work. It was a combination of arrogance and ignorance with Sandgaard, and it's quite a potent combination, that, and he wouldn't listen. That's what I'm most angry about Sandgaard for, is that he wouldn't listen to Peter Varney, who would have happily helped and got involved. And a lot of good Charlton people queuing up to offer advice that he just wouldn't listen to, and just went it alone. And you know, that's what I'm most angry about Sandgaard for, really. But you know, he came in with good intentions, and you can't ignore the fact that he did save us. But it was. Yeah,
he spent money. I mean, he spent a lot of money. Some of you think we got Kirk for 500 grand. That didn't just happen. You know, he put his hand in his pocket, and he kept the lights on. You know, we were really close to going out of business. So you have to respect him for that. But why not? If you don't know anything about a business, surely he's a businessman. You know that you go in and you start. You know, like you said, you didn't do all the writing because you're not a writer. You're a graphics guy. So you get people around you that know what they're doing. It just seems.
It's a really good point, Sam. It's a really good point, and it's something I've been banging on about since he arrived. In any industry, if you surround yourself, you know, if you're the boss, like I'm the boss on MODMAG, if you surround yourself with brilliant people, or in any industry, let them do what they're good at, you're the one that will still get the adulation.
Yeah.
If Sandgaard had come in and brought in a board of top-notch football experts, football executives, and you know, like Peter Varney and whoever, and they'd have got us up, it would have still been Sandgaard that would have been carried shoulder high around the boardroom. But he just wanted to do it all himself, which is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Crazy. I don't know if he thought it was too easy, or that, you know, there was things that we hadn't thought of. Because, you know, when he brought Ronnie Schultz in, I bought into him. I was like, Ronnie Schultz looked like he could actually score a goal. He missed one penalty and he doesn't play again. But actually, having a poacher in the box, for me at the time, it made sense. And I was like, okay, maybe he knows what he's talking about. And as soon as we had such a good thing with Bowyer, Jackson, and Gallen, that trio, I felt like we had such a good basis of moving forward. Like, you can base the core of the club on that, and then you develop from there. But as soon as he puts his son in with Gallen, suddenly we're signing players that you just think, well, they aren't what we were doing before.
Yeah.
And like players like John from Tottenham, who never got a game. And you think, well, we had Gallagher last year and you weren't here then. So what? Or Cullen. And you
think,
know
why that was? It was all Bowyer. because it was Bowyer's prestige and lure and the fact that I think he shared an agent with a lot of these players.
Right.
So it was a combination of him and Gallen, but I think Bowyer was a big pull and a big kind of cog in that machine, to be honest. I mean, everybody goes on about Gallen in that, but I think Bowyer played a big part in bringing those players to Charlton.
That's really interesting. I mean, when you think about it, Gallen was here before Bowyer, wasn't he? And we didn't have those players then.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a centre midfielder, why wouldn't you want to learn from Bowyer? Like any player would want to learn from Bowyer.
Exactly. When he was playing, he was arguably one of the best central midfielders in the country.
Yeah, just a shame we had another 5 or 6 that were higher up the rankings.
Exactly, yeah. I think, he would definitely have played for England more if he'd have behaved himself and if there wasn't the the Scholes and your Beckhams and your Gerrards. But when he was in that Leeds team, he was at a couple of seasons. He was on fire, wasn't he?
Unbelievable. He just seemed to be everywhere, and he was your perfect player because no one liked him unless you supported that team. I remember the same thing with Shearer. I remember watching Shearer, and I'd only seen him play for England. Suddenly, I saw him at the Valley playing for Newcastle. I was like, he's an arsehole. He's elbowing. He's like you could see. People. He was just a nightmare. But that's who you want on your team. You want someone like Lyle Taylor, who's a bit of a knob, but when he's on your team, you get behind those type of people. Like no one likes George Jobson apart from Charlton supporters because he's a pain in the arse to play against. And is the perfect thing.
Would you have had Lyle Taylor back?
No. I don't know if you watched any of the previous episodes or anything, but I couldn't do it. He just ripped my heart out. Basically, I haven't been hurt like that since Scott Parker. That was they're on this level for me because that guy comes back and if he just plays out the rest of that season, we stay up. I think. Yeah,
no, I think you're right. I think everybody thinks that. If he had scored 2 goals, that would have been enough. I always pinpoint there's loads of games, aren't there, over the course of the season, but that away to Birmingham where we were 1-0 up, I think Chuck scored.
Yeah.
And then I think they equalised. And that was as I say, there are lots of, and it's not really specific to Lyle Taylor, to be honest, but if he'd have played, I kind of get his reasoning, but he should have played. And I think Bowyer should have been tougher on him. I think Bowyer maybe should have said, "Come on, mate, do me a favour."
Did you see the interview recently where they talked on TalkSport about it?
I don't think I did. No.
Bowyer basically says, "Well, he's got that offer. He knows he's going to get that from Forest. I can't blame him. You can fucking blame him because we've got to try and stay in the Championship so we don't go under, mate. That's why you can blame him."
Yeah.
But the thing that surprised me was everyone really disliked Taylor for it. Solly, not a word. And I'm not saying they're the same player or they didn't have the same impact on the team. David Davis, no one even remembers he was at the club. But Solly was, Solly gave his heart and soul for Charlton. Like he had his testimonial. He came through. I think just give us a couple of games, mate. We just need that solid Solly player.
I can't say too much, but there's more to it than that.
Okay.
I wouldn't judge Solly harshly.
Gavin, I think we need to have a drink because there's too much already. I can feel like we're going to have to.
Yeah, I'll tell you off. Yeah, but to Charlton supporters watching and listening, so I think there's more to it than that. Don't blame Chris Solly.
No, all right, fair enough. You make a good point. How in terms of the Mod Pod though, that was that's where I really fell in love. I love the magazine. I think it looks great, but I'm a terrible reader. The articles are fantastic, but in terms of getting through them all, I struggle. But the Mod Pod really, really I love podcasts anyway. Obviously, that's why I'm kind of doing this. How did that? Is that just a natural offshoot? Because you seem to have a lot of. I don't know if you had support from the club or whatever, but the guests and the fact that you're doing it in the museum and that kind of thing. How does that come about? And are you planning to come back to it? Because it was May.
Yeah, I know. We need to get off our arse and sort it out. It's just finding the time to do it. But yeah, you're right. We really do want to do another one. But yeah, you're right. It's a natural offshoot. And I, like you, I'm a big podcast fan. I'm a big fan of the Quickly Kevin podcast. And I wanted to do something like that. And it was actually Dave Lockwood that got in touch with me. I always wanted to do it, but Dave Lockwood just messaged me out of the blue and said, "Have you ever thought about doing a podcast?" And I was like, "Yes." So Dave got involved, and he's brilliant at sort of producing the thing. And you're right. Through doing the mag, we've got a few contacts. Got really friendly with the guys at the museum, in particular Ben Hayes, who's been brilliant. So that was a nice little venue because I liked to do it in person. It's great. This is fine. It's great doing it on Zoom, but from a fanboy point of view, it's nice to go and be able to shake Colin Walsh's hand and
Absolutely.
and meet these people. And then the first one we did, we went and met Paul Mortimer in, I think, in Liverpool Street somewhere. We ended up doing it. And he was lovely. He was really, really good.
Comes across so well, doesn't he? He's such a wonderful
he
guy.
Speaks really well. He's very articulate, very intelligent, very considered, and he's got a lot to say. He's got a lot of really interesting things to say. Actually, in the next issue of the mag, we've got an interview with Maltz. But it was really interesting what he was saying about injured players and how fans don't necessarily realize what they're going through. And I think for Chucks in particular gets so much stick, mostly on social media, but end his contract, he's a waste of space, he's stealing a living. He's like, he doesn't want to be injured. I was in the covered end when he was carried off crying, because he'd got injured. He doesn't want to be injured. He wants to be playing. I feel really sorry for the bloke, and that's what Paul Mortimer was saying. There's a sort of responsibility to these players to give them the care, from a mental point of view, and sort of help them through it, because it's tough. It must be really tough especially if you're injury prone like Chucks is. You must think, what's the point? When's this going to end? Maltz was great. He was really generous with his time. He was just, and he was great to chat to off mic as well. I really enjoyed doing the pods, and we do need to do more. You're absolutely right.
Well, I mean, they were fantastic. I mean, Steve Brown, who's obviously beloved throughout the club, and talking to him about his injuries as well, you do think, God, like, they both had misdiagnosed injuries. They both it damaged their career. So it's nice when you talk to Laurie Wilson about being a vegan. I thought that kind of leveled it all out, and you kind of see how the game's changed. It's fantastic. One of the biggest things that you kind of blew my mind on, completely changed the way I think about football. It was in the interview with Varney and Sutherland, where they spoke about how they set Pow up to get that team together, and that meeting they had where Varney explains, like, Pow comes in, he says, right, you need to give me two players. You need to tell me the formation you want to play. You need to give me the credentials of two, number one and number two in each position. And then we're going to go out and we're going to make a list of 3 for each position. And then we're going to go out and find those players for you and bring them to you. And for me, that went from, why is the manager not signing everyone? Why are they not? Is it not just down to the manager? To how the hell would a manager do all of that? Like, that's insane amount of work you've got to do. And I think Steve Brown talks about that as well. Driving up and down the country, trying to get all those reports, it doesn't happen anymore. You can't do it. So that was the biggest thing for me. And getting their insight about, the dinners they did to get the North Stand built. And I'm just repeating all the stuff I've heard on the podcast, but it's because I love them. I've listened to them, honestly, 5 or 6 times each, because the insight you get, it's so much more of a flavour of what actually goes on behind the scenes than you can get just on a match day, or even going, like I say, you go to the museum and you see all the stuff. It's great, but you don't get that flavour unless you're talking to people. For me, I was just playing in the museum just on rotation, because you learn so much from it. It's fascinating.
The thing about Varney and Southers is, first and foremost, they're Charlton fans. So when we got them signed up to do the pod, they didn't need asking twice, because, like me talking to you now, what's not to? We're talking about Charlton. They do that till the cows come home. So, and they love doing it, and that's why I think Peter has been desperate to, try and help, try and get us out of the malaise we've been in for the last decade. Try and find buyers, try and, because it's his club. He wants it to succeed. That he's got a passion for it, like any other fan in the ground who's got, So, I mean, as I say, they were brilliant. and a real insight into how a club was run.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I think if you when you think about Varney, and like you said, he's a fan, you think he's got the triple whammy, hasn't he? Really, because not only is he seeing his club do badly, he's also seeing the thing he built pretty much be kind of ripped apart, or at least treated with the respect it deserves. Also, he's got the answers. Like, he's probably the one person in the world who knows how to fix it, and yet he's not being asked or spoken to. I mean, when I did think it was quite interesting, the most recent directors meeting they held on YouTube, Charlton was doing the interviewing the board, and it was great to hear that they were speaking to Curbs and were speaking to Brownie, because you think, why, when you watch that Charlton TV and you go, well, why aren't they doing what Brownie says? Like, he clearly knows.
Yeah, I wonder how much they are. I mean, I'd like to think they are, because it is a no-brainer, and from a PR point of view, cynical as that might sound, from a PR point of view, how great would it be if Charlton tweeted out that we're delighted to announce that Steve Brown joined the club as our new defensive coach, or Alan Kirbishley's joined the club as our whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. It's an open goal, it would seem. Yeah. But maybe I'm being too simplistic. Maybe fans like me are guilty of living in the past a little bit. You hear every time the manager's sacked, which is every other week at Charlton, I'll give it a Curbs till the end of the season. Yeah. And I've been like that as well. But when you stop and think about it, is that the answer? And he wouldn't want to do it. I don't think neither, because it would taint their legacy.
Yeah,
if Curbs came in instead, let's say Curbs, they gave it to Curbs instead of Nathan Jones, and we went down.
Yeah,
then Curbs didn't have that on his. He wouldn't be it wouldn't just be he was the manager in Charlton's most successful period in our history. It'd be like, oh yeah, and then he took us down the league.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, it happened with Shearer, didn't it? He went to Newcastle and then they get relegated, but. I just like to think that, there's a bit of that. What I think that Curbs, Brownie, Varney have is that sense of character, and that's what we haven't got at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's no, as much as I love Dobbo, as much as I love May, I don't think either of them really are captains. Not like you could, as recently as Pratley, someone that actually gets. Like, players playing around him will grab people by the scruff of the neck and say, you need to do, like, why aren't you doing what you need to do?
Yeah.
But we don't have that at the moment. I mean, Kirbishley was favourite thing about Kirbishley, he could whistle without putting his fingers in his mouth. That alone, have him in the tick just for that. Like, get him fucking moving.
Yeah, just for whistling, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. We're 35 minutes in and we haven't started on the team.
No, I'm aware of that. We should do the team, shouldn't we?
I apologise. That's my fault.
No.
How hard was it picking the 11? How did you? Well, I've got to say, it's one of the best sort of in terms of different eras. There's so many in there. How did you put any restrictions on yourself?
No, it was a bit scattergun, and I have to be honest. It was a bit like, I should say, they're not necessarily the best players that have played for Charlton. But it's a bit more. It's a bit like Desert Island Discs. They're players that kind of mean something to me. I picked a lot for nostalgic reasons. Players that, I don't know. I mean, I've picked midfield, players, and there's lots and lots of players that are better than those players. But let's get into it and see what happens, really. And I'll you
can chip in as you go along. Great. All right. Well, should we start with your keeper? Who have you gone for?
I've gone for Mr. Bob Boulder.
Now Justin Skinner trying to find possibly Browning. The ball out to Tony Pounder on the left-hand side. Pounder taking on Darren Fisher. Can he get to the byline? The chance now for Browning. The shot comes in. Great save by Boulder. Great save again by Boulder. And a fine save by Boulder. And now there's a chance for Tom Jones to get a strike on goal. And Jones! A great save by Boulder, and how on earth did he get the ball up over the bar from that position?
There he is.
Lovely, isn't it? So I think the term Mr. Charlton gets thrown around a lot. I say it a lot. You know, there's so many players that you end up saying Mr. Charlton around.
Well, when you're talking about Bobby Charlton.
yeah. Well, yeah. Or Jack.
The old
But in terms of Bob Boulder, he's a bit more before my time playing wise. But when you see all the stuff he does with charity and the community trust and all that sort of thing, he really does feel like Mr. Charlton. I don't think there's anyone who suits that name better. So why him? What was it about him?
Again, it was the first goalkeeper that when I started supporting Charlton, he was in goal. And he's called Boulder. What if there's not a goalkeeper's name, it's Boulder, isn't it? He's got to play in goal. He was destined to play in goal. When I was at school in the primary school in the 80s, everybody supported Liverpool, and this will be a constant theme actually of me talking about this team. But and I was in the minority of being a Charlton supporter, and there was that Liverpool connection, wasn't there? So everybody was doing the sort of Bruce Grobbelaar spaghetti legs things in the playground, and I was able to say, yeah, but Bob Boulder at Charlton, he used to play for Liverpool, and I think he was Grobbelaar's understudy, I believe. So there was that, and it's just quite a romantic thing about Bob Boulder when you're 10, and he was just unstoppable. It seemed. Obviously, he did. I think he saved a penalty from Brian Robson, which was memorable. And like you say, he's gone on to always be an ever present really at Charlton. And he played in the first game back at the Valley. He's just a favourite of mine, really.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I mean, he has got that presence. I mean, like you said, Liverpool, Sunderland, he played for some good teams, Margate as well. What was his distribution like?
I'm not sure he would have been in a Pep side.
Right.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because you think back to those days, and it was unheard of for the goalkeeper not to pick it up and kick it as hard and as high as he could to up the other end. If on the odd occasion in those games in the late 80s, early 90s, if the goalkeeper had started passing it around, you'd have been like, Jesus, get rid of it. It's funny. And in the same way as the pitches were always like a quagmire and muddy, that's the other thing that reminds me of those days, is the goalkeepers always just booting it as far up the pitch as they could. It's an interesting point you make, actually, because God knows what his distribution would be like, or what it'd be like.
What's incredible is that the keepers we've had some amazing keepers. Personal favourite Scott Carson. All of them lacking teeth. I know Bob Boulder missed teeth, but now Maynard Brewer's like a bloody model, and you just think, he turns up and he barely any mud on his kit by the end of the game. I think I'd still much rather just have Bob Boulder, like the big Bob.
As he in his 70s.
Yeah, I mean 100%. He's cycling all over the place. Like he still can do it, but you not think like Maynard Brewer. He's got no confidence. The defence have got no confidence in him. We're trying to play the ball out from the back. No one wants it. You're not better just sticking a big lump like Bob Boulder in goal to just terrify people and grab them around the scruff of the neck, like I say, and get the fucking ball in Rose Ed. Don't want it anywhere near here. And so many times this season, the last 10 games especially, you think if you had someone like that in goal, those goals that are going in, they're not going in now. And I think it's that one part of the game that's changed the most, and yet we're probably much worse off for it, especially at our level, League One level, where we can't play the ball like City. So why bother trying?
Yeah, I mean, Bob Boulder was the boss, wasn't he? He was like a lot of keepers of that era, that they were in charge. But you make a good point. Maynard Brewer, it's another player. I want to be great. I want to be good. Yeah. So much but he doesn't instill confidence, does he? And he does. You can't really hear, but it doesn't look like he's shouting much. He doesn't look like he's you know, bossing that 6 yard, that penalty area. So yeah, I mean, I've heard that. Is it Ward? Is it, what's his name? Who's come in? He's a big bloke and
really?
possibly in the old. And I got a mate who's a Swindon fan. He said when we signed him, he said, "Oh yeah, he's a great stopper." He was understudy for Woolacott at Swindon when the Woolacott went off to the African, and he had a really good spell. He said he's a really good shot stopper, really good keeper, but rubbish with his feet.
Don't care. Don't care. Just don't try.
That's what we need.
Just don't try. If you're not good with your feet, that's fine. Just get it in Rose Ed, because we've got enough technical ability in our team to be able to do that elsewhere.
Yeah.
We're not good at stopping goals. So for me, it just makes no sense. But a great choice. And in terms of, like I said, we've had some, when you think of Kylie.
Well, it was between Boulder and Kylie, to be honest, because Kylie was great. Kylie was a great keeper, but I just went for the nostalgic kind of nod, really.
It makes sense. It's a tough choice because we are blessed. We have, I mean, I think throughout my childhood, it was always, you went from Sasha to Kylie to, was it Carson straight after him? I think maybe.
I think he probably was, yeah. I don't know how much of a run did Carson get? Because obviously now everybody knows him at City, but how much of a...
Well, I remember him being there for at least a season, but one of your other players, I remember being there for a season as well. And I looked at his appearances and I was like, I thought he played a lot more games than that. So again, it's just that kind of time.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, let's go into your defence. I'm guessing you're playing a flat back four. Where do you want to? Where should we start?
Let's start at right back, I suppose.
Yeah, and you're going to have to. Did you remember? Do you want me to tell you?
No, I've gone for John Humphrey.
Well, Middlesbrough started their season in the First Division with so much hope, but they really can't afford to lose again here today. Here's Humphrey. He's had 2 goes in this move already. This is ping-pong defence. Oh, handball there. Not given. Here's Humphrey again, and he scored! Now, there's a rare occurrence. That's only the 6th goal of a career that started in 1980. William?
Yeah, he wasn't prolific, but that wasn't his job really.
Yeah.
He was Mr. Reliable. Again, in that same team that I started watching back in the late 80s with Boulder in goal, and John, in those Selhurst days, there were a lot of whipping boys. There was a lot of moaning going on. It seemed anyway at the time. There seemed a lot of players got moaned at, and pull your finger out, oh, he's rubbish, and worse. But never John Humphrey, it seemed.
Really?
He was just so consistent. He never put a foot wrong, it would seem. Never, ever put a foot wrong. And I think it was probably backed up. I think he must have been Player of the Year consecutively. But yeah, John, and I was lucky enough to meet him a couple of seasons ago.
Oh, wow.
And just a really lovely guy. And it transpires that through Southers, who I've got to know a little bit, Steve Sutherland, he's got a wicked sense of humour, John Humphrey. And he's,
great.
Yeah, he's kind of it's deceptive really, because from watching the team, he seems quite quiet and reserved, but apparently he's the joker in the pack. Apparently,
you need those, don't you? You really do need those people to keep that dressing room great. Speaking of Scott Carson, that's apparently why he's still at City, because he's he's such a good traveller. I think they call it. You just keep that banter up, that kind of
it's important. What was it Roy Keane said though? Wasn't it about Jordan Pickford or someone when he said I think it was Jordan Pickford or or someone like that, when they were picked to be in the England squad and he couldn't work out why, and someone said, oh well, he's he's a good personality, he's a character, he's good in the camp. He says, well, what's he do, card tricks or something?
It's so typical Roy Keane, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, incredible amount of. So he had 2 stints. He had 85 to 90, and then comes back in 95, 96.
Did he go? He went to Palace, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he played 202 times for us, and then plays 160 times for Palace. Now, when I was a kid, what I couldn't work out was why'd you choose that club and not that club, and why would you not go to United? Or what you realise as you get older is Palace and Charlton are quite close.
Yeah, it's geography, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't have to pull my kids out of school. But at the time, how was that? Did that feel like he's joining the enemy?
It's tough, wasn't it? Because he was going to their rivals. But yeah, I must admit, at the time, because I was only a kid, I didn't have the hatred or the bitterness towards Palace as most Charlton fans do, because my dad was a Palace fan.
Of course. Yeah.
So I didn't have that kind of. I mean, I do a bit more now, but at the time, it was more depressing and upsetting that he was going. Not the fact that he was going to Palace, just that he was leaving. It's like, oh,
yeah.
I don't know whether we'd been relegated or not. I don't know whether, but yeah, it was just a big old shame because he was one of our best players and he was leaving rather than, for me personally, he was going to Palace. But that had a lot to do with me being however old I was, 11 or 12 or whatever it was. But yeah, another one of those players in that side that I'll always remember, because again, all these players, Boulder and Humphrey and all that, they were on football stickers because we were in the top flight. They were Panini stickers, and that was a big part of it for me, as it was for probably a lot of kids. And Lenny was the manager. Lenny was recently a guest on Charlton TV, I think last season. And when I was watching, we used to sit in the member stand at Selhurst Park behind the dugouts. And I always thought, as a 10-year-old, Lenny Lawrence was an old man. He must have only been about 45 or something like that. So like, fast forward 30, 40 years on, and he's still, it's just weird. When you're young, you think everybody's old.
Yeah, but he's looked the same age forever.
That's what I mean, yeah.
I remember that because I think he made a big point of saying, well, because he was there for Curbs' unveiling of the stand, I think it was. And he was saying, this is great. Yeah, I love all this. Where's mine? I was the one who started this. How come I haven't got it? And you do think, like, again, before my time, but he really did put those sort of the bits in place. He planted the seeds that grow into Gritty and Curbs, and then
absolutely. You should speak to Southers about this, because he bangs that drum a lot, rightly, because that team of the late 80s, we owe a lot to, and we I don't know much about the playoff game with Leeds in the. So we finished fourth from bottom in the top flight, Division 1 as it was there, and they had introduced, maybe only for 2 or 3 seasons at the most, this scheme where the fourth from bottom in the top flight would play off with let's say the third from top in the second division to see who would either go up. So they would switch places. So that's how. So we finished fourth from bottom, and Leeds. I think there'll be people that will correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say Leeds finished third. So Leeds were playing us to go up to the top flight if they won, and we were playing to survive.
Jesus. And
it was over 2 legs, and in this, I think we were losing in injury time. We played at a neutral ground at St Andrews, Birmingham City's ground. And we will. God, there'll be people that berate me for not knowing the exact scores, but we were let's say 1-0 down with, I don't know, 5 minutes to go, and Peter Shirtliff, our centre half at the time, scored pretty much 2 goals in injury time.
Wow.
It was dreamland, and that win is so important, because Steve Sutherland will tell you, if we hadn't have maintained our top flight status at that point when we were pretty broke, it might have been the end of us. So and I think people maybe forget that. I
had no idea about that. I never even heard of that concept. It sounds incredible, like you could do that. But no, I had no idea. And I'm not like an old fan, but I'm not young. I mean, in terms of, like I said, 96, 97 first games, I mean, you'd think that's not that long before then. You'd think they'd still be talking about it. But no, I've not even heard that on Charlton TV or anything. That's fascinating.
No, it's a big deal, that game. It really is. I remember I was too young, but my dad woke me up to tell me that we'd done it.
Wow.
That's how much he wasn't really a diehard Palace fan.
That's amazing. I mean, going back to John Humphrey, the fact I found out a fact that he came from Alston High School, which is also had Stuart Pearce, John Barnes, and most recently Raheem Sterling come through there. I
Ah.
mean, he came from a good pedigree then. So, and I mean, like I said, played a hell of a lot of games. Did he? I'm thinking of kind of a Luke Young kind of right back where,
Yeah.
you know, solid, gets up and down, but you know, nothing fancy. Just
Nothing fancy, nothing flash, just solid, reliable, didn't do anything wrong, wouldn't misplace a pass. You just knew what you were going to get with John Humphrey every game, week in, week out. He was just, always first on the team sheet, I would say.
Yeah, God, what we do for one of those now. All right, do you want to go left back or do you want to go across your centre backs?
Let's go left.
Left, lovely. And you've gone for
Scott Minto.
Well, Middlesbrough started their season in the First Division with so much hope, but they really can't afford to lose again.
That was John Humphrey, wasn't it?
played the wrong clip. Sure, don't worry about it at all. This will be cut out. It's fine. Scott Minto.
Division. They soon showed why with a delightful goal, begun and ended by fullback Scott Minto. And in the second half, it was Minto's run down the left, which was to set up the second. The telling pass through to substitute Colin Grant that finished off Swindon their fourth league game without a win.
Colin Grant, eh?
Some good
Colin
names.
Grant. I think that was King Grant. I think the commentator got that wrong.
So Scott Minto, I mean, I didn't see him play for Charlton. Obviously saw him for West Ham, and I mean, he was at Barcelona. He was at some big clubs anyway. But
he went to Benfica with Graham Souness.
Yeah, incredible. But personally, the biggest thing I think he's done, Charlton TV, for me, is the biggest thing that the club's done in the life. It's been the best thing that we've had in the last 6 years. And again, it's something you've got to thank Sandcard for. He gets that going. But for me, to have those three, I think Charlotte's fantastic. She's been on the show and she was great. And, you know, they have other guests and that sort of thing. But to have Scott Minto, Steve Brown and Kirbishley talking about your club for 3-4 hours, it transcends everything. Suddenly you've got somewhere that you go. The thing that annoys me the most about being a Charlton supporter, one of the things, is that for my mates who are Palace fans or United fans, literally Instagram, Sky Sports, someone's talking about them somewhere. There was nothing about Charlton for those, you know, the sort of power years until we get sort of lockdown. And then suddenly Charlton TV comes along and it looks like Sky Sports and you're getting proper analysis. And for me, Scott Minto is fantastic at that. I mean, I'm sure he's a great player, but I don't think there's a better anchor in the game at the moment.
It was quite fortuitous around that time. I think Scott had unfortunately been let go from Sky, and I always thought he was brilliant on Sky. He was become kind of like, I think, the Spanish football sort of anchor whenever there's. It was really good, and I think, you know, it coincided with, you know, them making big changes, and he was, you know, one of the fall guys for that. But yeah, and he's always said, because I've spoken to him a little bit about it. He said that he never had to think about it when he was approached about Charlton TV, because he loves the club and you know, he owes so much to the club and he really, really enjoys doing it. So you're absolutely right. It's a massive. If anything, it's the best thing Sandgard did, really, Charlton TV, because, you know, in times where we're not enjoying ourselves that much, it's nice to go down memory lane, which is what they called that segment, wasn't it? And chat and we were lucky enough with the magazine. We did an article where we spent the game with them in the studio. It was Wigan away. We watched the game with them in the studio.
Wow.
With Curbs, Brownie, and Minto.
What was that?
It was amazing.
It's been incredible.
Well, you're watching your team with Curbs, Brownie, and Minto off camera.
What are they talking about? Are they dissecting it all the time, or are they?
They're not in a kind of forensic way, but they're saying things that, you know, they might say, you know, he should have dropped deep. Well, I'd make a change now, you know, or, you know, he's lost his man there, or, you know, they're just being a bit more insightful than you would be if you're watching it with your mates, which was really nice. It's really good to experience that.
And you can see in the studio, they do have to bite their tongue. Like you can see there's things they want to say, but obviously they can't. And obviously they're very well media trained. So to sit there and get in their real honest responses, I'd love that.
Yeah, it's difficult for them, I think, because it's especially this season, week in, week out, they've got to try and be positive. It gets hard, it gets difficult for them to, and they've also got to slightly toe the line.
Yeah.
They can't be saying, Appleton's got to go,
No.
or but it's very difficult for them to remain positive, or when we're in the predicament we're in. So it's difficult.
Yeah, it's a tough job. Scott Minto, though, I'm guessing he's another like John Humphreys, although he did seem...
not really. Oh. I would say that he was a lot more silky than from an early stage when he sort of broke through, because I think he came through the academy, Scott Minto. I think he was a kid and he broke into the first team under Lenny Lawrence. And it was quite clear, I think, from quite early on that he was destined for bigger things. He had a really lovely touch. He can go by a player. He linked up really well with Colin Walsh. I mean, Colin Walsh joked on the podcast that Scott used to do his running for him. Yeah. And there was something in that, but they overlapped really nicely. And he had a lovely wand of a left foot, as did Walshy, of course. And they just worked really well down the left. But he was, from quite early on, a fan favourite. And it seemed like only a matter of time before he came in for him, and then Chelsea did.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a favour of mine because he offered a next sort of level up of left back. Really, he had a nice touch to him. He could, as I say, he could go past a player. He had good vision. He could pick out a pass. He could put a slide rule pass through and set up a score in the clip. So yeah, he was sort of like the next level up of left back, and it was always a fan favourite.
How much did you struggle? Was that just that's done? Because obviously Chris Powell comes along a few years later and turns into another one. I'd say is a Mr. Charlton. Is there any competition for you in your mind, or is it just no?
Yeah, of course. I think with every position that I've chosen, you could have 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But you got to choose one. And I remember at the time, because again I was younger, you kind of maybe attach a bit more. You're more when you're younger, you're more upset when players leave, aren't you? Yeah. When you're older and a bit wiser, and you're a bit more weathered, if you like, and you can kind of come to terms with it, and it's all part of how it works. It's like my little boy who's 11. He's seen. I have to tell him that Corey Blackett-Taylor had left the other week, and and Dobson might go. And when you're that age, it hurts more.
Yeah.
So I think it does hurt now. You're absolutely right.
No, nothing hurts when Scott Parker left. But I think that's the difference. Scott Parker left in such a way where it felt like he'd really put the boot in, like he'd started cheating on you before he was out the door, sort of thing. Whereas I don't know how Scott left, but Scott Minto left. But it doesn't seem like there's any kind of negativity around it. It was just right, get that off and go.
No, not at all. And to be honest, I didn't want. You can pinpoint when Scott Parker left that. Start of the slide maybe, or we were at our apex, weren't we? We were at the height of our powers just before he left, and the league position tells you that, doesn't it? I think we were 4th, weren't we, at one point? Yeah. But even with Parker, I don't really hold a grudge. It was hurt. I didn't want him to go, but it's football, isn't it? It happens. We're not the first club that it's happened to. Lyle Taylor's a completely different kettle of fish. That's completely different. But no, I don't really hold any ill feeling towards Scott Parker, and certainly not Scott Minto. It was just one of those things, The players will always come and go from smaller clubs to bigger clubs. It's just the way of the world.
I mean, I have to completely disagree with you on Scott Parker, but I like the fact that that's where your head is. It seems very healthy. That's great. Let's go on to your backs. Who have you gone for?
Who have I gone for? I've gone for Simon Webster.
Simon Webster. Let's get him in now.
Back in December, the Charlton squad found themselves with a new captain when Andy Peake left to join Lenny Lawrence at Middlesbrough. Replacing Andy as skipper was Charlton's popular centre-half, Simon Webster. Simon joined Charlton from Sheffield United at the beginning of last season and soon carved a name for himself as a regular on the Charlton team sheet. Although Simon has never thought of himself as much of a goal scorer, this season has seen the Charlton captain put the ball in the back of the net on a number of occasions.
Long throw by Lieben, no real effort into it, did not go a long way, and Webster's got there. And they're back on level terms. Simon Webster, the number 5.
So, Simon Webster, I mean, again, I've heard the name, didn't ever see him, was never lucky enough to see him play, but he plays 127 times for us, and he has 328 appearances in his career. He only scores 14 goals across that career that he has. He plays for quite 11 different clubs in total, and he makes 328 appearances, scores 14 goals in total. 7 of them came at Charlton. That to me is insane that he scored half the amount of goals. So, like they said there, he doesn't score a lot of goals, but it seemed like he popped up with a few that season.
Yeah, that was the season they played him centre forward, I think.
that'd be what did it.
Yeah.
So what was it about Simon?
Again, I know it sounds a bit like a stuck record, but another Mr. Reliable, really, and a kind of warrior in the I suppose in the Jason Pearce mould, I guess. Another one I think that was missing teeth. Sign
of a good player,
but. He always, he never left. He always, what is the phrase? He left everything out there, or didn't leave everything out there?
Left everything out there.
He did. Yeah, he left everything out there, including his teeth. And he and as you heard in the clip, he became captain and chipped in with goals. And he was just. You wanted him in your a centre half. He would win headers. It's funny because I see him around the ground every now and again. A few seasons ago, me and Henry, my little boy, had season tickets in the West Stand, and a few rows, him and his boy, I think, used to just come and watch the game.
Oh, really?
And it struck me that as a kid, he would be this like huge warrior of a man.
Yeah.
But now he doesn't seem very tall at all. I think he doesn't look like a centre half. It's strange. But at the time, he's like missing teeth and snarly, and you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him. And I think that's what I liked about him at the time. That's who you wanted as your captain. That's who you wanted in your team.
It's exactly who we're missing now, isn't it? That kind of just no nonsense. Get the fuck. I mean, there have been glimpses recently. Michael Morrison's probably the last one that I saw that really did that. Like, really got into people. I mean, you can name as many as you want, but we just don't have any of that at the moment.
No, not really. I think maybe again we've got Pep to blame for all these ball playing, like with ball playing goalkeepers. You've got ball playing centre halves, and they're all just a bit more nice and cultured, and they're not animals like they once were. I don't know. Maybe Patrick Bauer was a bit more ballsy. Certainly Jason Pearce, a bit more industrial, but you're absolutely right. I think that's what we've lacked, and I was hoping that Gillespie might be that, but he's taking a bit of time to settle. Not yet. I mean, I'm not writing him off, of course, but I
mean, when Coventry came in, I was like, this is the guy. He's got all the answers. That first little cameo he had, I thought, this is going to be our captain. He knows how. And then the next couple of games is not. But we're judging these players. My dad said it. You're throwing them all in at the same time, and obviously Appleton had to do that because he's trying to save his job as well. But what you don't realise is that it takes a while to bed into a team. When you watch Ladapo, it's such a shame because for me, you play Kanu for 80 minutes and you bring Ladapo on for the last 10. Next game, you bring him on after for half an hour and a half, and then he's ready to start.
Yeah.
But because Appleton was under such like a cosh, suddenly he has to throw everyone in. Ladapo now has got not as much confidence, so he's not going to do. Yeah, it's just a mess, really, isn't it? But
it is. It's a strange situation because on paper we've got a really good squad, and we shouldn't be in this situation. I don't want to be one of those fans that say, we're too good to go down, because say that at your peril. But it does seem like, on paper, why are we here? Why? It's bizarre, and what worries me is that we're in a rut now, and every game I struggle. I just think I can't see us getting anything because once you're in that rut, it's difficult to get out of it.
It really is. I mean, the best it goes is we scrape something against Reading, and then suddenly, I reckon if we do that, we scrape a win against Reading, we're on an upward trajectory, possibly playoffs, sort of like. But it's going to take a lot.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was praying for against Derby. I just think it would have been such a massive boost if we could have got them it. If we'd have got scraped a win against Derby, it would have done so much for their confidence. It'd have been, a little bit of breathing space. I think that's why I was so disappointed, because I really wanted that. I really wanted that 3 points, because it would have eased the pressure a lot and done the world of good for their confidence.
100%. Yeah. Okay. And next to Simon, who have you gone for? The other centre.
Next to Simon, who have I gone for?
You've gone for.
Who, remind me.
Richard Rufus.
Richard Rufus. Yeah, sorry.
Perez has come in the crowd and he's locked in. And Richard Rufus has scored his first ever goal for Charlton, and it's 3-3. Incredible.
That was his first goal for the club, I believe.
Yeah.
Bizarrely, I didn't know that till quite recently. I obviously knew that he scored in the playoffs, and I could have sworn that he'd scored before then, but obviously not.
Well, he goes on to score quite a few after that. He scores against Liverpool, doesn't he? And he scores a decent amount, and then he gets injured, and then it all changes there. But for me, that sorry, go on, Richard Rufus. Tell me all about him. What do you like?
Another Mr. Reliable, really. Really solid centre half. Had a really good knack of getting a last ditch challenge in when you thought, oh no, he's clean through. The sort of leg would come from nowhere and he'd sort of hook it away.
Long leg as well.
Long leg, yeah, the long leg of Rufus, and he had a lot of pace. And again, didn't seem that tall, but won a lot in the air. Really imposing. And I'm not sure who would have been his partner as a centre half of that era.
Well, you had sort of
Steve Chappell, Steve Chappell. Yeah, Steve
Brown.
Phil Chappell.
Those two didn't play. I remember Steve Brown probably saying in your podcast actually that they didn't actually get that much chance to play together. But Eddie Yowds was the other one who started that game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, very different. Like you said, he felt taller, didn't he? And he just seemed to cover everything.
Yeah, and I think he was another one that was very high up on the team sheet because he was so reliable. And I just don't really know what more to say about him really, other than that he was just consistent week in, week out. He'd chip him. I say he'd chip him with goals, and he didn't until the playoff final.
Yeah,
but
he also won best ever defender for Charlton as well, and I think rightly so.
Did he really?
Yeah, and I think that goes a lot. I think coming from the academy, as much as it doesn't mean everything. You don't have to have this whole thing about the manager having to have come from Charlton. I don't believe, but we definitely love our academy players and we give them a lot of time. I'm sure every club does, but the fact that he comes through the academy and then has that impact and scores in that game, goes a long way.
Yeah, no, it means a lot, doesn't it, for your team? If a player, they're one of your own, that kind of that old adage, but it does mean a lot, and it does make it more special if they've come through, and they've not only come through, but they're great. And I think that's why we so wanted the likes of Albie Morgan and to be great, and he almost was, he almost was. I felt sorry for him really, because there was so much pressure on him, I think, to be the next, I don't know, Mark Kinsella or whatever, and I think everybody wanted him to be so much because he'd come through. And I think a lot of these players have been blooded too soon, haven't they, that have come through the academy, and when your Henry Ryler or your Daniel Kanu or your Miles Lee, when they break into the first team, I think fans have a tendency to want them to be instantly incredible, and they want them to be like Wayne Rooney was on his debut. And that's a bit naive, I guess, but understandable. When you hear that so and so scored, 40 goals in a season for the under 23s or something, and then they come in and he's not ready, put him out on loan. So.
Yeah. Well, Daniel Kanu is one of those ones where I thought I was so upset with us not getting an extra striker in, because he was doing so well at Southend. I think if he stays on loan this whole season, next we've got a real talent on our hands, someone who's really been blooded and ready to go. Whereas now he's come back. He's obviously going to be third choice to May and Ladapo. If Chucks or Miles come back, I think Chucks is running again, but Miles won't be back. But he becomes fourth, and then then he needs another run in the team to get up to fitness. And you think, like, the best it goes, like you said, is probably what's happened with Miles, and that he came in, made an impact, but they didn't put too much pressure on him. Probably having an injury has probably done him a favour, because he's not been too relied on this season.
Yeah.
And now he's going to be fighting for his position when he comes back. If we, keep hold of Ladapo or get an extra striker in the summer, and if he's competing against Kanu as well. But yeah, if you're too good, like Gomez, you're gone before we really get to see much of you. Do you know what I mean? So you can be too good for the level as well.
Yeah, true.
Well, it's a solid black line, looking good. So in midfield, so is it it looks like you've kind of gone for 4 centre mids.
I've not thought about it as much as I should have done, Sam. I didn't realise that they were all going to get together and actually play.
Well, this is it. Next week, we're probably if we could play these against Reading, I think we'd have.
Have you been in touch with them? Because are they all available?
My Russian isn't very good for one of your next.
Okay, I suppose we should do that one first, shouldn't we?
We do that before.
Okay, I'm going to go for not completely sure whereabouts in the midfield, but I'm going to go for Alexei Smirtin.
Wasn't I? Yeah, well, we had a decision to make. He was late, and do we put him on the team sheet? And then if he doesn't make it, we're going to have to go back into the ref and say, like, not that someone's got injured, he just ain't here, and we perhaps told a fib when we handed in the team sheets, but we had a bit of faith in him that he was going to get it. But that was the thing, he was travelling from Chelsea way to here every morning train, never late, always on time. We had people coming from around the corner who couldn't get here, so no, he was a proper professional. And it didn't surprise me, what he's gone on and done, and the fact that he's still remembered here. When I've just been to the charity thing this morning, I said, I've got to go. I've got Alexei Smirtin at the Valley. Oh, what? You got Alexei Smirtin? Because the Charlton fans will remember him.
I certainly do. I didn't know about that story about him being late. What was that?
Well, I know as much as you do from that, from what Kirk said. Right. What made me laugh was I was searching around for clips of Smirtin in a Charlton shirt, and the best I could find was Kerbishley standing next to him talking. It shows you how much Kerbishley talks. That's all we've got.
Well, it's quite telling, really, because it was very fleeting that Smirtin was at the Valley.
Do you know how many appearances he made?
No, but it was probably.
Have a guess how many.
12.
Oh, okay, you've blown that out of the water, because it was 18, and I thought that was insane. Because Costa only made 26, and I remember.
It was a guess. I don't know. I wouldn't. It could have been. Yeah. So it was 18, was it?
And for me, he's there half a season, and he plays every game, sort of like Costa did.
I think he was recalled by Chelsea. We had him on loan, and he was recalled, much to everybody's annoyance.
He was
but
great.
I remember at the time, and I'm going to go on the record to say this, he's the best player I've ever seen in a Charlton shirt.
Wow, that's a huge statement. That's a huge statement. Yeah. So go on.
Use that for your trailer.
That's it. Right. 1 minute and 16. There we go. What? So I love Smirtin. In terms of centre mid pairings, I don't think we've ever had a better centre mid pairing, and I love Kinsella, I love Jens. Well, Jensen's not so much, but that's a different story. But we've had some amazing players. But Smirtin and Murphy together were the most balanced midfield. I think we were right to be fourth for that thing. But sorry, go on. Tell me about.
I remember thinking it's funny you should mention Murphy, because when we signed Murphy, I felt it was a real statement of where we were.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like, bloody hell, we're signing players from Liverpool. We're as you say, we were fourth or wherever we were. We were more than holding our own. We were beating big teams in the Premier League, and it wasn't a surprise anymore. We were impressive, and we were signing players from. Oh no, he was at the back end of his career, and it didn't really work out. And he's not revered as it. But at the time when we signed him, I mean, he didn't do as a greater job for us as I'd have liked. There were flashes with Murphy. Every now and again he'd do something like his touch, or he'd go by a player and he'd play it. And you think, oh yeah, he's absolute class. But it didn't happen enough.
Yeah.
But with Smertin, I just remember thinking, Jesus, this is like not just the next level, it's the level above that. His touch, his vision, you couldn't get the ball off him. It was just like, I've not seen this before at Charlton. I've really not seen it. So it was very brief, but it was like, that was, for me, the pinnacle of our powers when we were in the Premier League. We've got Alexi Smertin in a Charlton shirt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching him 10 years younger than you are. I'm delighted by that, by the way, that I'm 10 years younger. I mean, I'm actually a bit pissed off because you look younger than me. But in terms of what I remember, I just remember him being everywhere. He just won everything. He was like that type of Terrier Lee Bowyer kind of player where he just seemed to win everything. And in my mind, and again, I'm completely misplaying it, obviously, but he would just win it. He played it to Murphy, and Murphy would find Ben. And that was, what more can you want? That was incredible. But he was like 9 stone nothing. He was probably 5'10" or 5'7", something, or he wasn't a big bloke to have in the centre midfield. He just won everything. He was like Dobbo on sort of steroids for me in my memory. It
was the sort of player that it was, like you say, the best player Dobbo could possibly wish to be.
Yeah.
But I suppose similar kind of players, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, he it's not like, so he went to Pompey first on loan from Chelsea and did okay, and then he comes to us, and then he goes to Dynamo Moscow, and you think, right, he's gone home. That makes sense. They sold him for $1 million to Dynamo Moscow, but he comes back to Fulham, and then just like, how does that?
Is that what he did? I didn't know that.
Yeah, came back to Fulham, and I just sort of, it frustrates me that we weren't able to get him back, and I don't know why or what was going on.
I don't know what went on. It wasn't quite a Conor Gallagher situation, because I think the Conor Gallagher situation was more that the Southall and Nîmes brigade turned up and they weren't paying his wages, I think, allegedly.
Right, okay.
You might have to cut that out, I don't know.
Time again. There we go.
Yeah. So it wasn't the same thing, but I suppose you'd have to ask Curbs why Chelsea recalled him, because I get the impression everybody was a bit miffed. It's like, oh, thanks. I think we were meant to have him on loan till the end of the season, or for the season.
Fantastic. I mean, he was definitely the best centre mid we had at the time in terms of what he was doing. But the Gallagher thing, I'm pleased to know there's more about it, because I just felt like Lampard just said, "You lot are too shit, so I'm going to take my best player off you," sort of kick you when you're down kind of thing. But Smertin was playing every game. He was doing what you think you want to do. If you're loaning a player, you want them to play, don't you? That's the only reason to loan them out.
Yeah.
I don't hold them anymore. It's a weird one, that. But a great start. But your best ever player, that's a big statement as well.
I know. I mean, there'll be people that disagree with that, of course. But just on a personal level, I just remember thinking at the time, sitting at the Valley, watching him, thinking, I can't think of he's not my favourite all-time Charlton player, but I think he's the best and a symbol of what we achieved at that time.
It's funny, isn't it? When I started this, my mates were joking, saying, "Well, wouldn't everyone's be the same 11 because you have only had so many good players?" But when you think about best players that we've had, I mean, players like John Barnes played for Charlton.
Yeah.
Like, what went on there? But yeah, that's why it fascinates me. It will do forever, I think. So in this sort of 4 diamond or kind of,
just looking.
I can tell you if you go.
No, I'm going to go for the next midfielder on the list, which is my all-time favourite Charlton player of all time ever, which is Mr. Mark Kinsella.
2 Republic of Ireland midfield internationals on view. Roy Keane for United and Mark Kinsella for Charlton. Kinsella, though, very nearly ended up at United with Keane, as Dickie Davis explains.
When Alex Ferguson's looking around the pitch just before kick-off today, he'll no doubt cast a glance at one of the opponent's most consistent players. and think back to when he tried to sign him as a teenager.
Alex did come to the house, yeah, when I was 16. I'd been to Man United and back, and the scout over in Ireland sort of said, well, we'll get him over, and he came and had lunch with me mum and dad. Had to get an autograph to bring back to school to show I wasn't lying. Hopefully he saw something in it, and then Coach United came in with pro contract early on, and with a chance of playing first team football at an early age. So it's sort of, if you start from the bottom and go down, it's obviously there's only one way up really, and it's worked out well for me. We got relegated the very first year I went there, and was playing non-league football for 2 years, and since we got promoted then every year, it's been the last 8 or 9 years, it's been superb.
Turning Manchester United down for Colchester was the start of Mark Kinsella doing things the hard way. But they sold him 4 years ago to Charlton, and the Valley faithful are hoping he can keep Charlton up this time. After all, they're already 5 points up on their tally compared to this time 2 seasons ago when they were last in the Premiership.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that about Ferguson.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's interesting that he's mentioned in the same sentence as Roy Keane, because I always thought he was our Roy Keane.
Yeah, and he played, he played next to him, played 48 times for Ireland, so he played next to him a lot. And you think, in terms of who you're learning from, we talked about Bowyer and why centre mids would want to come and play with him. Kinsella, playing next to Keane, he's going to learn a lot. So, yeah, your favourite ever player. So I remember towards my memory of Kinsella is him being Mr. Charlton, I'm saying it again, but, Mr. Reliable, creates, free kicks, workhorse. But towards the end of his career, I just remember him playing the ball sideways or back a lot, and it used to drive me mental. So I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong on that, because again, I would have been a lot younger than you. But
I think it's no secret that towards the end of his time at Charlton, his knee had gone.
Okay, right.
And I think that's why Curve cynically sold him to Villa. So I think maybe that was he was on the way down there. But for me, he had everything. He wasn't just a breaking up play workhorse. He could pick a pass. He could score a goal. He was box to box. He never gave the ball away. He was, again, reliable. I think fans warm to someone, that just gives 110% every game and does it. But if you don't give the ball away and you work hard, you're instantly going to be liked by the fans. But he did that and then a lot more. He just is such a complete player for me.
Yeah,
I don't really know what else to say. He was, and he epitomised that. I think Kirbishy said actually epitomised the rise of Charlton through that period, through like he was obviously he arrived after we were back at the Valley. It wasn't that early, but then in that kind of 98, 97, 98 season, and he sort of rose with Charlton, and he and went from a player that we'd bought from Colchester to playing in Japan in the World Cup, and his rise was almost parallel with Charlton's rise.
Absolutely. He's one of those players that Curbs always said, if we didn't go up, if we didn't get promoted, is that right? I think when, in that championship season, if we didn't...
No, I think it was more... Well, not so much that, but I think with the playoff final with 98, if we'd not have won that, there'd have been...
This one who was getting nicked.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say we sold him with a broken knee, because we bought him for 300 grand and we sold him for 1.15 million. And yet he played 280 times for us. That's a long career. That's a good return on your investment, isn't it? There can't be a better bit of business.
No, and the story goes that he was almost sold to Gillingham.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, amazing player. What do you make of the time he was with Parkinson and as a reserve manager, sort of assistant manager? Do you know much about that period?
Well, I don't know what happened as such. I remember being really pleased that he was on the coaching staff. I thought, great, because
this is the kind of thing we're talking about now with Brown and Kirbishley. That's the perfect person you kind of want when you're on the side.
And I don't know whether he was good at the job or not, because it's quite. There's so many examples throughout history of good players that you think would be great managers or coaches, and they're not, like Roy Keane, for example. So I don't know whether he was any good or not, but I just remember feeling really pleased that he'd been appointed as Parkinson's number 2, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, because he was such a fixture at Charlton for me in that period, and as I've made no bones about, my favourite player. So when he arrived in a coaching capacity, I thought that is great, and the romantic in me was thinking future Charlton manager, but it wasn't to be.
I don't know what went on or what goes on behind the scenes, but you kind of think they did. It wasn't like we just gave up, was it? They were trying to sort stuff out. I think it's maybe just it's the same thing as Moyes coming in after Ferguson.
Yeah.
No one was going to have an easy time of it. Maybe it's a bit different because of when it happened, but in Dowie, Pardew, I don't know, it just seemed like it was kind of, I don't think anyone thought we were really leveling up or anything.
I mean, I think the team that Kirbishley had built and was, it's the height of its powers, as we were discussing, those players were never properly replaced as they either left or retired or got old, or, do you know what I mean? They were, and that wasn't addressed, I don't think. So I don't think it was one particular, manager. I think it was they inherited not a dying team, but a team that was on the way down and hadn't been given the love that it needed to replace your Jensens and your Kinsellas and your, all these players. They were never properly replaced.
No, you're right.
That's what I put it down to. I mean, it's all very well blaming Dowie, although Dowie had a big war chest, didn't he? Had a lot of money to spend and didn't spend it very well. But I don't know, was he making all those decisions?
You can't imagine. I mean, it was. Am I right in thinking it was still Varney at the time, or?
I think it was Murray. I'm not sure. I might be wrong. I'm not sure Varney was still there. I might be wrong, but I think it was Murray pulling the strings at that time.
Yeah, but Murray's not. It's not like Murray's looked at as being like making loads of mistakes, particularly, is it? It's just, or am I wrong in that? I don't know. Maybe I am.
Do you know what? I don't fully understand. I think Murray's stock went down when he kind of aligned himself to Du Châtelet. I think that's when perhaps he kind of went out of favour. I mean, yeah, I don't fully know the Murray story and why lots of people think of him sort of in a negative sense, but yeah, so I couldn't really say.
Well, it's really interesting, but yeah, another fantastic player. So you've got 2 more left in midfield. Who are we going with?
Oh, who have I got? Sorry, I'm just going to consult my notes.
That's all right.
I'm going to go for the next one on the list is Joe Aribo. That makes me quite sad watching that, because
it's a great choice. I mean, considering a lot of your players come from a similar sort of generation, and then Joe pops up. So what? And I mean, can I just say, a lot easier to find clips of modern players.
Yeah.
What is it about Joe? What makes you sad there watching that?
I loved Joe Aribo. He was the sort of player that he was. When I used to love Steve McManaman at Liverpool.
Yeah.
And it's not quite the same player, but I love the way he just lackadaisically go by a player. And, we saw that in those clips there. He just had such natural ability. And of all the players that we've had that were great and we've let go too soon, he's the one that makes me the most upset. I mean, I know there's an argument to say, you know, you got your Joe Gomez and your Lookmans and your
Consa now, I guess.
Consa, yeah, even and Parker as well, you know. But at the time, I was so enjoying that season, and I so wanted Bowyer to persuade him to stay and play in the Championship, even though I knew he was destined to go somewhere else. He was the sort of player that not only got you off your seat and was able to kind of do something brilliant, he would also be brilliant at breaking up play and winning the ball back and linking play and putting players through. And he was just such an exciting player. And my little boy really liked him as well.
Yeah, it goes a long way, doesn't it, when your son's looking up to him? I mean, that in terms of your midfield and the players you've watched, that's a huge compliment to Joe that, you know, you've seen the Premier League years, the Selhurst years, the years where we were in the top first division before it comes to Premier League. That's a huge compliment to him, but it also kind of shows like that was a real bright spark season in what has been a terrible last coming close to 15 years, isn't it? It's going to be around that.
I think we really lucked out that season, and at the time didn't realise it. If you look back on that team, you know, Christian Billick, you know, I thought was immense that season, absolutely brilliant.
The whole team. When you think we had, I know I keep going on about him, but Taylor, Aribo, Cullen, that whole midfield felt strong, didn't it?
Yeah, it was really strong.
And when you look at it on paper, you go, "Well, he's going. That's all right. We've got Gallagher, blah blah blah." Then you look at that midfield compared to what we got now.
Yeah,
it's worlds apart, isn't it?
Yeah, wouldn't give for a Joe Aribo now.
Yeah,
just that. Yeah, he would just win it and win it and win it, and you wouldn't be worried about. You know, it's all right. He'll win it back. We'll get it back. Oh, he's got it back, and we're on the attack again. Every game, it was just. Yeah, and there's that little bit he does before Cullen crosses the ball in the playoff. I don't really know what it is. A little kind of flick.
I think he just passes it back to Cullen. I think that's all pretty much.
Yeah.
There is the flick as well. Of course there is. But yeah, in terms of his performance in that, you know, you worry that a young lad like that is going to get overwhelmed by the occasion and maybe shy away. He didn't. He played really well. They all did. It was such a great game to watch. Apart from the first 5 minutes.
Do you think? I didn't really enjoy it that much. I was just so tense.
Do you know what? I've never been more like, this is such a Charlton thing to do. I think we're going to be all right, than when Naby Sarr scores the own goal. Because I'd had such a disconnect from Charlton from probably from the year we get relegated to the Championship through till that year, really, with Bowyer coming in. I'd gone off to university. I'd met my wife. We'd got married. We'd bought a house. We're doing all this stuff. I was working on Saturdays as well for the first time, and for that whole period. And I suddenly see Bowyer's back in. Oh, that's interesting. And we're building the team. And the playoffs are great. And then you go to the final, and like I'm with my dad, and we've travelled all the way up there, and you know it's been a difficult game to get into the ground and that sort of thing. You sit down, 5 minutes there, own goal. I'm like, oh. Right, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal, was it?
Everyone kind of got behind them, though. And I sort of felt like, do you know what? I think we're going to be all right. I think, and the way we played, they didn't really hurt us that much more after that, particularly.
No, you're right. I think it was crucial that we equalised. We went in 1-1, didn't we? It was 1-1. That was crucial, I think. But I remember. When Bowyer scored, it was a bit like a film where everything. I was like that. I couldn't believe it. Everything erupted around me, and then I joined in, but I just couldn't believe it.
Oh, it was incredible.
Couldn't believe it because it seemed like this doesn't happen to us.
How do you compare it, considering you saw them both? I'm assuming you were at the first one. How do you compare them?
Well, that is a bone of contention, Sam.
Oh no, not there.
That year, my nan died. And,
mate.
No, it's not a sad story. It's just one of those things, like everybody's nan does. And my mum came into a little bit of money, and this must have been in the I don't know, whenever it was, 6 months before, and she booked us a holiday with that. And nobody really thought about the dates or anything like that.
Oh, why would you?
So I was in Greece.
Oh God!
And my uncle, who I went with, he went on his own to Wembley. And I've never ever.
Oh mate!
How was the holiday?
Did you have a nice holiday?
No, it was really, really ordinary.
What were you doing? Watching on teletext? They have teletext.
No, I was on the phone to, I think, my brother's girlfriend at the time, and she was saying, "Oh, it's penalties. It's going to penalties." I was on this payphone in Samos, the Greek island of Samos.
Oh my God,
that is incredible. And it's the biggest regret and embarrassment that I have as a Charlton supporter, that I wasn't at our greatest ever moment.
Because you were flown back early, or flown there and back after the game?
It wasn't really. Oh yeah, maybe in hindsight, but so yeah, I don't really tell many people that because I'm a bit embarrassed about it.
I'm pleased you did. I'm gutted it took to 1 hour and 38 minutes, to be honest, to get that out. That is amazing. Oh mate, well there you go. Then I'm going to tell you from one fan to another that. Yeah, the 18-19 playoff final was crap in comparison. You missed out massively. It was amazing. Unbelievable.
But the thing is, it wasn't just the greatest game in our history. It's possibly the greatest ever game played at Wembley.
Best ever hat-trick. Definitely 100% best ever hat-trick.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to your
okay.
Final...
Well, this is another nostalgic choice, really, which I haven't got an awful lot to say about. Only really that he was. Oh well, I'll tell you, it's Andy Peake.
And another success coming up, recorded for us by TVS.
The only goal came in the 25th minute following a superb free kick by the Charlton captain Andy Peake. Portsmouth's best chances fell to Guy Whittingham.
Peake's rocket.
That's all you get. A Rebo, you get music. It's all set nice.
Yeah, it's all produced. Yeah,
it's just that. Not even a replay. Not even a replay. Yeah. So go on.
Andy Peake was. It seemed he's got the kind of tag of sort of like a free kick long range specialist, and everybody used to say, "Oh, it's Peake's rocket or Peaky rocket. Let's have a Peaky rocket," which is long range effort. I'm not sure he was that prolific at it.
Oh, really?
but it was quite nice. The fun fact I've got about Andy Peake is that. And I hope this is true. He was best man at Gary Lineker's wedding.
Yeah.
And Gary Lineker was best man at his wedding.
I heard you say this on the podcast. Yeah.
No, did you? I'm repeating myself.
No.
I'm cross-pollinating podcasts.
That's it. It's a beautiful thing. Don't worry about it at all. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Where did they play? Because
Leicester. They're mates from Leicester days, I think.
So he had 4 clubs. Can you name the other 2?
Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
And I'd like a quiz. You should have done this more.
And listening to it earlier, and you were doing the quickly, Kevin.
Oh God! So Leicester. He started his career at Leicester.
Yeah.
Charlton, Middlesbrough, and no, you'll have to tell me.
Grimsby.
Oh, was it Grimsby?
Yeah. I mean, it's not an exciting end to that quiz, but now you know.
Well, no, but you can't do anything about correct answers, Sam. If it's correct, it's correct.
That's all you can do, isn't it? But yeah, you're right about him not being prolific. He's played 177 times and apparently only 5 goals.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound. Only 5 goals.
Yeah, I don't know why I've chosen him really. Again, though, he's just another one of those players that I remember fondly, and he's now, I think he's retired now, but he left Middlesbrough to become a policeman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he joined the police force.
Him and Gary Neville really went in different paths.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sam. I've not got enough to say about it.
Mate, please, we're an hour and 40 minutes in. If you had as much to say about him,
other than I really liked him, and I was sad when he went to Middlesbrough.
There you go.
Because he followed Lenny Lawrence. I would have been. It was the same kind of era, so I would have been 12 or 13, I guess. It was that same kind of era.
they're like I said, they're the formative years. They're the players that stick in your mind. And again, it's a huge compliment to him that through Jensen, we've chosen Kinsella, but all those players we've had since then, he's still the one that you think of that fondly.
Yeah, I don't really know what. I wish I had more stories and more to say about him because it would make for a better podcast, but but I haven't. Yeah, that's that. But
Lovely.
yeah, he followed Lenny Lawrence because Lenny Lawrence went to Middlesbrough, and I think he's one of his first signings.
Oh wow, okay.
And I think that's probably another reason because I was probably a bit sad at the time when he left Charlton for Middlesbrough.
Well, they hurt, don't they? They do hurt more at that age. It's like
it's similar. Yeah, I mean, there'll probably be a lot of similar age Charlton fans going Andy Peake because he probably, in the grand scheme of things, is quite a mediocre choice.
Not at all. It's your choice, Gavin. If you like,
No, but I haven't even got anything to back it up with other than Andy Peake. That's another fun fact. Andy Peake is part of my my work sign-on email password.
Oh right. Oh really? Yeah. There you go.
I can't tell you the other half, obviously, for security reasons. But it's
part your mother's maiden name?
No, my mother's maiden name is Andy Peake as well.
Well, there you go. That's the reason. So you've gone with two up front, who one I think gets in everyone's team. Actually, and it's astonishing that he hasn't. But the other one I wasn't as aware of. So who do you want to start with?
Okay, well, I'll start with the lesser known one, but again, boringly, it's from the same era. It's Jim Melrose.
On the field, Paul Goddard to start the game, playing his second full game.
This is the best clip to choose.
I'll go with it. And the whistle goes, and we're off. Straight away, Melrose has scored. That's an unbelievable start. Well, what happened there, Alvin? 14 seconds. It's hard to believe. A hell of a start for Charlton. That'll make it very, very difficult for us to get back in the game now. Charlton's got a reputation for getting a goal ahead and then soaking up a lot of pressure. So we're going to have to be patient now and try and get to that finishing ball.
9 seconds. 9 seconds. Fastest ever goal.
Fastest ever goal. I think it was beaten by. I think it's the fastest ever goal, like in English football, for a long time. And I think it was beaten quite recently in the grand scheme of things by Shane Long at Southampton, maybe.
Okay, yeah. I know Di Matteo had one of them, but 9 seconds, and it was the fastest goal. It's obviously Charlton's fastest ever goal.
Yeah.
He played for a lot of teams. So go on. Unless it's going to be Jim Melrose. I just like Jim Melrose. Why Jim Melrose?
He's my first hero because when you start supporting a club, I went to that game that we beat Aston Villa, I think 3-0 in 1987, and I think he scored 2 and Mark Stewart scored the other one. And of course, when you're 10. You want to idolise the goal scorer, don't you? You know, because the kids at school are talking about Ian Rush and Clive Allen and whoever they support, and for me it was Jim Melrose because straight away you latch onto the goal scorer, don't you? And I think it was just a snapshot in time, really. I don't think he was that prolific. I think he scored a memorable hat-trick against Everton that season. But he wasn't Clive Mendonca prolific, but he was the first person that I thought, right, he'll do. You didn't have names on the back of the shirts then, but I would have had Melrose in a heartbeat.
He's the one you're saying in the playground when you're scoring goals. And
exactly. That was my Ian Rush. That was my Kenny Dalglish.
It's lovely.
So that's really it. And I was lucky enough to meet him. We did a video where we went to Alan Kirbishy golf day. MODMAG made a little video, and Curbs invited us to a charity golf day. And Jim Melrose was one of the guys that was playing. So I was able to tell him what I just told you. Yeah. And he, a bit like you, said I didn't look old enough to have been to explain to him that I was older than I look.
it's a nice. That's not me and Jim are giving you the same compliments. I know you love a quiz, so
Oh yeah, go on. Then.
you played for 11 clubs.
Oh blimey!
How many can you name?
Partick Thistle.
Yeah.
Manchester City.
Yeah.
Leicester.
Yeah.
11, you say? Oh man, where did he go from us? Did he play for West Brom? No.
No, and I might
St Mirren. Did he play for St Mirren?
I don't know where I've got 11 from. Just keep going, basically. No, not St Mirren. It is there's another Scottish club. A lot of clubs up north.
Celtic he played for.
Yeah.
Did he play for Montrose?
No. Similar sounding team to that. I'll give you that one. Macclesfield. Is that how you meant?
That's what I meant. I always get Montrose and Macclesfield mixed up.
To be fair, I've screwed you. There's only 4 left.
Oh, go on. You better tell me because I'll be here all night.
Sure?
Yeah, go on.
Coventry.
Oh,
before he went to Celtic. Wolves.
Oh, did he play for Wolves?
Wolves, yeah. Leeds. And then Shrewsbury. And then he ends up at Macclesfield.
Do you know? I did know he played for Leeds. Yeah,
yeah.
A bit of a journeyman. That's just it. You know, again, there'll be lots of fans that have said Jim Melrose. He's not that. He wasn't that flash. It's a bit like me choosing, you know, Simon Church or something. But
you say that he scored a lot of goals. So his goal conversion rate. Do you want to have a? Well, it was. Do you want to guess what club it was best at? Kind
of. Was it at Leicester?
No, it was at Charlton.
Oh,
and
was
he
it?
was 1 in 3, and then he had a lot of sort of 3 point. Hang on, I'll fuck that up as well. No, it's 2.5 for us, and then he had 1 in 3 at Coventry as well.
How many did he score for us? Have you got that?
He scored 19 goals in 8 games, which is that's solid. It's a solid return. So it's not like I wouldn't say Simon Church. I'd probably say someone like. I wouldn't want to say maybe Martin Pringle in terms of
right. But it's that snapshot of right place, right time. I was impressionable. I latched on, you know.
No, I mean from that goal though. I mean, it looked like he knew where to be and how to. Take
I think he was a seasoned striker. I think he was on Charlton TV a season or 2 ago. It was good to see him.
I mean, I think it's just it says a lot. It's a compliment to these players, but also it's proof. I think that if proof be needed, that your those formative years kind of set you up for life, and no player will really hit you as hard in the heart as those players do.
Yeah, and you don't at that age you don't see all the frailties and the mistakes or the you don't see what older fans see, you just see what you want to see in a way. It's like, and I see that in my lad as well. He was, bless him, he got a Charlton shirt for Christmas with Scott Fraser on the back.
Oh man.
And because and it's partly my fault because Scott Fraser's another one of those players that I wanted to be good. I wanted him to work. I wanted him to be an all-time great, and it's just not worked. And I think Henry, my boy, sort of picks up on what I say, and and there was with Scott Fraser, there were flashes of greatness. There was, and there was a bit of promise, and there was like, he could be out, but for want of, I don't really know why. It doesn't help that he probably played under about 4 different managers.
Of course not, definitely not. And he's a certain type of player that isn't going to work with certain type of managers. Like for me, he just kind of epitomised everything that was wrong with our team, though, in that he looked like he had so much to give, but he didn't want to give it. He wasn't that player who's going to leave it all out there on the pitch. He quite often just kept it all in him. Like he didn't.
But you do get to the flip side today. You do get players that don't necessarily look like, but they'll wander around and they'll do something brilliant, and they'll not every player is going to be like a Roy Keane or a Brian Robson.
Well, we had Jensen, didn't we? And
yeah, exactly. That's a good example.
When I was a kid, I didn't like Jensen at all, and he was sort of keeping Robinson out. For me, Robinson was like my who did you say, Kinsella? Like I loved everything about him. He worked so hard. He'd give it a mouth all the time. My dad loved him. I loved him. But then Jensen came along and he wouldn't put in a tackle and he wouldn't run around. And then when you watch it back now, you're like, he didn't need to. He was a completely different type of player. But at the time, it kind of, he just...
He did have a knack of not necessarily putting in a tackle, but coming away with the ball, didn't he, Jensen?
Yeah, unbelievable player. Okay, so we come to the final player, your last striker, sorry. Who have you gone for?
It's Simon Church. No, it's Clive Mendonca.
Pettersson's clearance. Jones. Mendonca has been forced wide. Still Mendonca! Excellent goal from Clive Mendonca.
Yeah, he knew where the goal was, didn't he?
I mean, you're suffering because he's been picked by so many different people.
There's probably not much I can say that hasn't already been said. But
I mean, there's so much. I mean, clips wise, you could pick anything, couldn't you? Because he just was such. We were so. I remember everyone speaks about, all the players speak about it. Curbs has spoken about it. Like, he's just, I don't know if Curbs has actually spoken about it, but just such a natural goal scorer. And I don't think we see the same again. I think even Darren Bent isn't as natural a goal scorer. It's probably Lyle Taylor that's the only other just natural scorer we've had in terms of just amount of games that we saw.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think that Alfie May is in the same bracket.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just that, isn't it? The natural sort of instinctive goal scorer. I can't remember who it was. I think we might have had someone on the podcast who said we just knew that if we got it up there, it'd do the rest.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was, but it might have been Brownie that said.
Yeah, it might have been Brownie, I think, or more, maybe Morts, but yeah, one of those two.
You just knew that. You obviously had to give him service, but it didn't have to be on a plate because he was capable of, dropping the shoulder or taking it, a yard or so to the right or the left, and in a way that he didn't always look, that it didn't often look like it had that much finesse, but he just had a knack. Often didn't seem to strike it that well. Oh, it's in the corner.
Yeah,
he scored again. Oh, and again, and you just do it effortlessly, and he had a sort of deceptive pace as well.
Yeah,
he could go by a player with it. He'd do things really quickly. And the playoff hat trick is a perfect masterclass of what Clive Mendonca was about. Absolutely. He'd get the ball where he wanted it with one touch. He wouldn't take two or three like some lesser players might. And he just knew what to do. And then you do see flashes of that with Alfie May, I think.
I'd say Rooney. I think Rooney's the only other player I've seen, like you said, doesn't really look quick, but is, especially over like 4 or 5 yards, just covers that distance, doesn't need to take extra touches. He maybe didn't have as much skill as Rooney, but he didn't need to because he's just a more of a sort of number 10 rather than that player in behind.
Yeah.
So obviously you've covered kind of everything about the playoff final in MODMAG. Have you got a chance to meet him? Have you spoken to him?
Oh, mate, we tried. We did a charity Q&A at a brewery in Greenwich for last year because it was 25 years for the playoff final, the anniversary of the '98 playoff final. And we got Curbs and Varney and Brownie to do a Q&A, and we got Ben Ransom from Sky to host it.
Great.
And we made quite a bit of money for the Jack Jeffries Children's Cancer charity. So that was great, and it was a lot of stress to organise, but it went really well. And we were desperate. We were trying to get. We wanted a surprise, him to be the surprise guest.
That would have been amazing.
It would have been amazing. And I spoke to Keith Peacock, who apparently keeps in touch with him to try and get him. But I think he's just shy. I think he's just, he lives up in Sunderland now. Tragically, I think, well, not tragically, but I think it's a shame that I think he works at the Nissan plant in Sunderland.
It's funny. I think I spoke to Joe Puddyfoot came on and we were talking about it, and it's just like, you look at it one way and you go, well, he could be coaching, he could still be involved in the game 100%. But one thing, maybe he doesn't want that. Maybe he's quite happy being up there. You don't know, do you? You don't know that kind of personality. But also, I don't know if you can teach what he had. I don't know if you're able to translate that into coaching, because it's so natural. Like, how do you teach someone to be as good as you? You can't.
Yeah, and not every player wants to retire and go into coaching or media. I know for a fact that he's quite a shy man. He's a family man. I don't think he's a massive personality, so which wouldn't necessarily lend itself to coaching. But I mean, there's something. Maybe I'm being a bit too mawkish about it, but the fact that he's such a cult hero at Charlton, not even a cult hero, just a hero, an all-time great at Charlton, and now he's doing the job that he shouldn't be. You know, he's played in the Premier League. He shouldn't have to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's a generation of players who have played for clubs like Charlton, who have played at the top flight, at the highest level, and they're not as wealthy as they should be.
Yeah, it's just the wrong time for him.
It is the wrong time.
2, 3 years, 5 years later, he's living.
I just think it's a crying shame, really.
Shame. My dad reminded me of a story. You talk about being a family man. We went to a restaurant, a kids' restaurant in Bexley Heath. It must have been just after or just before the playoff final, and we sort of went up and sorry, Mr. Mendonca, can we get your autograph? And his kids went, "Why do you want Dad's autograph?" And it really just leveled it. And it's a lovely thing. He was a great guy and like really lovely to chat to. I mean, I was really young. My dad obviously talked his ear off.
Yeah.
He did. He just seemed so approachable, and it is a massive shame. And I don't know. I think there'd always be. You'd think that he'd always got a job for life at Charlton in terms of.
You'd have thought so. You'd have thought so. And you know, maybe I'm being a bit overly emotional about it, but he's probably happy and fine. But I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me that he's this all-time great at Charlton, and
he's probably hated in Sunderland as well, isn't he? Because that's where he's from, and we knocked him out twice.
Exactly.
But yeah, a great team. So let's have a look at it on paper. Let's see what you think. So that's how I've sort of lined it up for you. What do you think of it now, looking at it like that? I'm going to say it now. It doesn't look like there's a lot of width.
Well,
how's Humphrey getting up and down the line? I think Minto could do it. What about Humphrey?
Minto could do it. I think Humphrey did, as you saw in the clip, but it's rare. Yeah. You're right. But I kind of chose the team not thinking that they were actually going to go and play.
Yeah.
So I did it as a kind of basically 11 of my favourite players that sort of could play together, maybe.
Yeah. You know, Bob Boulder would be straight in there though if you gave him the shirt.
He would. He definitely. He wouldn't need asking twice, would he?
I don't know if Richard Rufus would be able to now.
He might. He might be able to pull a few strings.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, I know. In terms of a team, there aren't many that are going to be that, are they? Like, I think if you put, I don't know what kind of player Peake was, and I'm still none the wiser.
Nobody knows, not even me.
But in terms of having a Rebo, Peake, and Kinsella maybe and Smerton sitting behind him, you probably cover most of it. And
that'd be all right, wouldn't
as
it?
we said, all you need to do is give it to Mendonca. He's going to score for you anyway, so it's not much to worry about.
Yeah, no, I'm a bit embarrassed that all I had about Andy Peake was a second-hand anecdote that he was Gary Lineker's best man.
It's a good story, though.
Yeah, but I've already told it once. I've forgotten about that.
So I'm going to throw you a question now.
Okay.
I'll throw everyone. If you had to put one of the current squad, so basically who are still playing at the moment, into that team, who would you swap out?
So I have to get rid of one and replace it with another.
Yeah.
I think I would probably replace Andy Peake with George Dobson.
It's pretty solid, isn't it?
Yeah, if I had to.
Yeah. Well, I can't really defend Andy Peake, I'll be honest with you. But George Dobson, I'm sure he walks into most teams, doesn't he?
I'd have thought so. The other one might have been Alfie May for Jim Melrose, but no, I'll stick with Dobson for Peake.
Yeah. I mean, I love it, mate. I think in terms of, you've chosen with your heart, which is so nice, because everyone thinks about it, and you don't want that. No, I mean, in terms of like what you've gone for exactly what I would do, which is my favourite players, just seeing 11 of them on the pitch, and that's who I want to play. You can't really think about formations and stuff like that. It doesn't really work like that, does it? It's just how they affected you, and it's lovely. In terms of manager, that's the other one, and I feel like it's always such an easy question. But obviously, you've seen some big guys come and go. I didn't see Lenny Lawrence, so I never feel that connection. But we've spoken about it a lot. But I feel like I know who the answer is going to be. Who would you have managing them?
Well, I think in our it's got to be Alan Kirbyshire, hasn't it? Yeah. I can't. It's sad to say that there probably won't be another manager in our lifetime that has achieved as much as he has. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this is the start of the Nathan Jones era. But how many times have we said that?
And thought it as well with Holden. You're there. He's drinking in the pub afterwards. You haven't. We've taken us up to United. He's going with Ten Hag for a training session.
It all looked good, didn't it?
Yeah, I think we just got rid of him too early.
While we're talking about managers, the other crying shame was not giving Johnny Jackson longer. I
don't think Sangard ever wanted him though, did he?
No, but you know why? Because he was getting all the adulation.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know that for sure. That's what I'm guessing.
I take everything you said as gospel, mate.
Well, no, that's not an inside scoop. But I think that all the while, the crowd are chanting Johnny Jackson's Red and White Army, and not Thomas Sangard's Red and White Army. I think he was only in it for the adulation. And when that stopped, when everybody started calling him out for the donut that he was, I think that's when he started thinking, I'm not interested anymore.
It must be quite hard to run a company that you don't know anything about. No one wants to sing your song. You've pumped loads of money into it. You're still shit, and no one likes you. I mean, I'm not saying I understand why he did it, but I don't really blame him for walking away. I think that you don't. The biggest thing is the Châtelet split in the club and the ground again. For me, ownership has never done. I mean, to think about how hard we had to do to get back to the Valley, and then one guy just comes along and it's like, no, separate again. Because what stops it? If we go down to League Two, what stops him setting off that?
Oh man, don't. Let's end on a high. Let's not end on.
We ended it with misery.
If you have cheered me up, actually, Sam, I'd forgotten about our current predicament, and that cheered me up talking about the good old days.
It's fun, isn't it? And I've got to say, like I said, biggest inspiration is 100% MODMAG and the MODPOD, because in times when it's not great, you can stick on that episode with Mortz or Walshy or Brownie, and you listen to it and you go, I want to know who that was on the 16th green falling asleep. Was it Kinsella? Who was actually asleep? I
don't know whether Brownie actually told us actually.
Yeah, because I think he said it's one of two. I think it might have been Stewart and Kinsella. He didn't say who it was exactly, but that's the ones he can tell. Imagine the ones he can't tell. Oh God, I'd love to know what that guy knows. It'd be incredible.
Well, I'm lucky enough to have got reasonably friendly with Brownie,
really?
So that's a nice little happy byproduct of the mag. And the other happy product is I've met loads of good Charlton mates as well, which is really good.
Goes a long way, doesn't it?
It really does, because when I went to Charlton with my Uncle Ken throughout until quite recently, really, and which I wouldn't change for the world, but it meant I'd never really had Charlton mates.
Yeah.
So I never used to be a bunch of mates that we'd meet before and have a drink and then go to away games with, and I kind of missed out on that a little bit. But now I've got that, which is really good.
I'm exactly the same. It sounds like a parallel, really, because my mates all support Palace, and they'd go there for 10:30. They drink in the pub till 2 to 3, straight into Palace, see a Premier League game, pub afterwards, maybe at half time, whatever, straight to the pub afterwards. That turns into a nightclub, a couple of others. And I was like, but no, when you go to football, you go with your dad and your younger brother. You've got a bag full of club bars and raisins. You buy the program. You might get you can't get a burger or anything. You might get a packet of crisps or something at half time. And then it's 5 minutes before the end of the game. You're running back to the car to beat the crowds. Like that was always my Charlton experience.
Yeah.
And recently, I've been going with mates and inviting friends along and stuff like that. And it's a completely different experience. Going to the Bugle or the Royal Oak afterwards, it's a completely different, especially when Sandgard wanders in or Holden does. It's a completely different experience to the whole day. It's amazing to think that that's actually there and people have been doing that. And I've, like you said, been missing out on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mate, it's been fantastic having you on. When's the next issue out?
Well, the next issue went to press on Monday. So hopefully it'll be on sale for the Lincoln game.
Fantastic.
And yeah, it will soon be up online to order. We got an exclusive interview with Paul Konchesky, who's on the cover. Got an interview with Paul Mortimer. Yeah, and loads of other stuff that I can't remember. But yeah, it's full of Charlton stuff. 56 pages of nothing but Charlton. If you haven't tried it, do.
It's fantastic. And are there any ambitions with it? Is it just a case of we just keep it going as long as we can, or do you want to? Is there anything you've kind of got in mind for it in the future?
Well, it kind of just ticks over. It washes its face. We're not in debt or anything. It pays for itself, but we're not rich. We can't. We don't. Everybody does it for the love of it, and all the while we can do it and cover our costs and produce it and enjoy it. We'll carry on doing it.
Amazing. And the pod,
we do need to do another pod. The pod hasn't finished. We just need to get our act together and get some guests lined up. Maybe Andy Peake.
It'd be nice to know something about him. That'd be lovely. Oh, mate, it's been fantastic having you on. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me, mate. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, mate. Cheers. And lots of love, like and subscribe, and we'll speak to you all later.
Cheers, mate.